Okay, I think we can get started right on time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to APS webinars. We are happy to continue our first student-led undergraduate seminar series, Pulse, with a panel on selecting good mentors, a key to academics and research growth. I'm Ariana Vlad, an APS ambassador and undergrad student from Harvard, and I'll be your host today for the broadcast. I am joined by Maurice Reiger, APS student ambassador and master's student at the Technical University of Munich, who will be moderating the Q&A portion of the webinar, and Sarah Monk, membership and volunteer engagement coordinator from American Physical Society, who is providing technical support. Thank you all so much for joining us. APS webinars are brought to you as a service of the American Physical Society, connecting you with the expertise of individuals who can offer insight into physics careers, educational programs, and professional development for students, working physicists, and educators. This is the fourth webinar in the newly launched series, Pulse, which comes from Physics Undergraduates Learning and Sharing Experiences. Our next broadcast will be on effectively communicating your science findings and will take place in late February. This will be the final broadcast in our series, so please make sure you don't miss out by signing up for the APS webinars list using the link shown. This webinar series is organized and sponsored by the APS Student Ambassador Program. The student ambassadors allow students to represent APS at their local institutions to promote APS membership and resources while fostering a community of physics students locally and globally. You can visit the website on the screen to learn more about the programs or apply. APS membership is your connection to the wider physics community through news, research, and online directory, events, and more. APS offers distinct meetings, newsletters, and online collaboration spaces to help you zero in on the professional working in your field of study. You can advance your career with access to the APS job board, webinars, and more resources for physicists. In celebration of National Mentoring Month, I'd also like to highlight some of APS mentoring programs available for students. The APS Industry Mentoring for Physics program, called IMPACT, connects students and early career physicists from any country with industrial physicists worldwide to provide career guidance. Visit impact.aps.org to learn more. The National Mentoring Community, also called NMC, aims to provide historically underrepresented students in physics with access to an inclusive network of mentors, a supportive community, and professional development and resources. Find out more at the link shown. Before formally introducing our speakers, I would like to go over some housekeeping items. Today's presentation features speakers from multiple research fields in physics with diverse career trajectories in industry and academia. They will be providing information about their backgrounds, exploration of different science fields, and how they interact with undergrads in their lab. After the speakers finish the presentation, the remainder of the program will belong to you for our question and answer session. Because of the number of people attending this webinar, we are only accepting text questions in the Q&A box. So if you'd like to ask a question, please type it in the Q&A panel located at the right side of your screen. Please indicate which panelist your question is for if you'd like to hear from a specific speaker. You may submit questions through the panel at any time during the webinar, and we will answer all of your questions at the end. We will do our best to cover all of the questions that you submit, but we want to apologize in advance if we are unable to cover everything. Finally, a link to the recording of today's presentation will be emailed to you after today's event, and it will be made available on the webinar homepage. Please allow about 4 to 5 days for video to upload. We encourage you to complete the survey upon exiting so that APS webinars can improve its ability to provide you with these valuable services. And so with that, let's get started and introduce our speakers. Bri Hart is a senior program manager for diversity and careers for the American Physical Society. In this role, she manages select projects within the APS portfolio of national and international programs that support equity, diversity, and inclusion in the physics community. Her primary responsibility is leading APS National Mentoring Community, a community that centers the experience of Black, Latinx, and Indigenous physics students. Bri's professional background and interests include developing and leading STEM-focused programs to create space for historically marginalized folks within the higher education and nonprofit sectors, including women and gender minority students, first-generation college students, and students who have been ethnically and racially minoritized. Bri is a proud two-time graduate of University of Georgia, where she earned her Bachelor's of Education in Health and Physics Education and her Master of Education in College Student Affairs Administration. Hannah McCright is a second-year undergraduate at the University of Maryland, where she is double majoring in physics and astronomy. She is in the Gemstone Honors Program, a four-year research program culminating in an undergraduate thesis, where she and her group are exploring an optics and engineering-based design to help mitigate color blindness. She currently serves as outreach coordinator for the Undergraduate Quantum Association Club and is involved with her college Society of Physics student chapter as a member and tutor, as well as an active participant in the mentoring program. She's also involved in her college astronomy, gardening, beekeeping, and skate clubs, as well as working as an introductory physics class teaching assistant. Hannah is currently doing experimental physics research in several labs, including research on particle accelerators, plasma diagnostics, and E&M relating to W-band waveguides. Through her research, she operates the electron ring particle accelerator on her campus, works with high-power lasers, handles radioactive materials, machine materials for her experiments, and performs computational data analysis. She also has experience executing computational research using data from the compact muon solenoid experiment in CERN. Last but not least, we have Dr. Larry Woolf, a technical fellow at General Atomics Aeronautical Systems, where he has been involved in the development of thin film coatings, advanced materials, and energy conversion systems since 1982. Woolf has also been president chair of the GA Science Education Foundation since 2007. He has served on 21 NSF and 12 APS national activities and has been involved in many K-12 curriculum development projects. He is the author of 73 scientific publications, holds 26 patents, and is a fellow of the APS. He was a task force member of the APS Effective Practices for Physics Program project from 2016 to 2022, and is currently a member of this editorial board for 2023-2024. Larry Woolf is a member of the APS Committee on Education for 2022-2024, and is a chair for last year. He also served in the chair line of the Forum on Education and was a member of the Phys 21 project. He is the US member of the UPAP Working Group 16 on Physics and Industry. He received a PhD in low temperature physics from USCD in 1980 and has served as a mentor for 5 USD undergrads. Thank you to our panelists for being here, and I'm handing over the broadcast to Maurice.
Thank you very much, Ariana, for this introduction, and hello together from my side. It's a pleasure to be with you all here today and to moderate this APS webinar. Having a mentor can kickstart your career and accelerate academic and personal growth. But the question we will elaborate on today is how to actually find a good mentor for yourself. And with this said, I would jump right into the topic with the first question. And this is, what are the key characteristics that a mentor should project? To the panelists, feel free to jump in and say something about it. I think, Larry, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. I actually created a list because I got a little head start about what some of the questions might be. So I'll just go down my list that I thought about for a while. One is their role is to help the mentee. So I think that's the key thing. It's all about the mentee. It's not about really the mentor. It's all about the person you're working with. A second is honesty, always being honest with them and having the respect that they deserve. Another key aspect is trust, mutual trust between the two of you. They need to be able to trust you, and you need to be able to trust them. You need to show interest in them as a person, the whole person, not just, as someone to mentor, but the whole package. Providing a mentor's full attention to the mentee during meetings that you have. Really listening to the needs of the mentee and delving into their situation and their needs. Understanding the current state and context of the mentee and meeting them where they are and trying to understand where they want to go. Being proactive and providing direction about next steps. and a willingness to use all your experience to help the mentee and to share your own personal story in relation to their needs.
Okay, thank you very much. So, and also thank you for the preparation. Is there anything that Bri or Hannah want to add to this list?
I think that's a wonderful list.
Me
One thing
too.
I would one thing I would add too is I think it's important for mentors to also exhibit a sense of humility and be willing to learn and grow and be willing to be vulnerable in that learning and growing. I think a lot of times with mentees, when they look to mentors, it's like, oh my gosh, this is the wise person who knows everything, who's experienced everything in life. And I think sometimes mentors feel a pressure to show up in that way and be perfect. But I think for mentees, it's also important to seek out a mentor who is truly authentic and truly willing to share mistakes that they've had on their journey and mistakes they probably still make today, or even mistakes that they make in the mentoring relationship. And it's all a matter of how that mentor is willing to address those mistakes to move forward and learn from them.
Yeah, Hannah, do you have something to add to this, maybe from the student perspective? I mean, we have already covered a lot of points.
Yeah, I was
But
about to say, I think that's pretty much everything I was going to say. But I will say that from the student perspective, one way you can kind of tell if a mentor is exhibiting all those things is like, well, the easiest way is just if you guys get along. I feel like as a person to person, um, and that kind of opens the door to like having real conversations with your mentor. And yeah, I don't know. I think just as a student, it's easy to tell. Well, kind of easy to tell just based on like if you guys are getting along.
yes, Larry, please.
Yeah, no, I think Bri made a really great point, and I just want to go over that. I think a lot of times, maybe as an undergraduate, we'll look at someone who's a professor, and someone in industry, and look at where they are and think they must have had a very smooth path because look at all they've done. But in reality, I know, at least in my case, there were a lot of major bumps in the road that almost knocked me completely not going to grad school. I had a number of disasters along the way. And I think it's really important to point those out because, everybody has, especially as an undergraduate in physics, I think everyone has uncertainty or as a graduate student in what your career is going to be, where you're going to go. You just, you don't really know for sure. And that is a very common experience that everyone has had. So I think, yeah, showing your humility and all the issues that you had to get over and all the roadblocks you had and the uncertainties that you had are good to share because I think it tends to make your mentee feel more connected and that they're not the only one with these feelings.
That's true. And then also you feel more approachable and yeah, just more human. And as we heard, it's a lot about the connection between mentor and mentee, that this is the right fit, so both can profit in the ideal case of this relationship. Okay, if there is nothing to add to this question, like I said, we had really a lot. So thank you very much. Then we have a question which is specifically for Bri. And it is a fact that underrepresented minorities in physics have a harder time to find mentors to advocate for them. So what resources are there to specifically for these students who don't have a strong support or they are not represented at their schools? Is there any resource they can rely on?
Yes, there are several resources. And I will start with the program that I manage, the APS National Mentoring Community, which is a mentoring program for historically marginalized and minoritized physics students. That's both undergraduate and graduate physics students. I think everyone here is undergraduate though. And so what happens is you join our program and you're able to connect with our network of mentors. And mentors range from academia to industry across the gamut of physics disciplines. But we also plan community building events. So there's the one-on-one mentoring relationship that we help facilitate and foster, but we also plan opportunities for mentees within our community to come together and share their experiences, or just talk about what it's like to be a physics student. So even if you may be the only person who looks like you in your department, coming together with a community of folks who from across the United States and honestly internationally, who are also physics students with similar shared and lived experiences. I also want to highlight the Impact Program, Industry Mentoring Program, APS Industry Mentoring Program. And so even though it is not tailored specifically for historically underrepresented students, it does provide the opportunity for international students to connect with mentors across industry that are both here in the US and also international. And then I also want to lift up some sister membership societies. So there's the National Society of Black Physicists, the National Society of Hispanic Physicists, the Society of Indigenous Physicists, and another organization called SOCNAS, which is all about diversity in STEM. They each also provide conferences and also potentially opportunities to connect with a community of folks who could be potential mentors. So those are a few tangible resources that I can think of. And there's always me. If you don't know where else to start, feel free to also just reach out to me and I'll help you get going in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is pretty helpful. And also for the attendees, if you have any follow-up question regarding the programs that have been mentioned right now, just write us an email. We will forward this to Bri, and I think she will be happy to answer your questions, because I think this is really important to also seek support if you are not properly represented. And I think we can be very glad that there are specific programs especially to support you in that case. Then I would go on with another question specifically for Hannah. And this is, through what experiences did you find your mentors in the past? Were these academic experiences or extracurricular experiences, or maybe something else? Maybe you can just tell a little bit from your own background.
Sure. So one of the main mentors I've had is through the Society of Physics Students. So they have like a very rigid, like you get paired with like a mentor and like it's very official. But it happened that my mentor was actually in the same club as me, and that really helped us like, connect a lot more, and we ended up getting along socially very well. So I guess that kind of falls under extracurricular. And then I would say another really big influential mentor in my life would be my one of my PIs for my lab. So that's kind of more through the research route. So I guess that would also be extracurricular. And then one academic mentor I've had was, I guess like there was like a little like extra project you could do for the class, which would let you talk to the professor more and present every week. So I got to know him pretty well. And he actually is the one that vouched for me to work in my other PI's lab, who's the one I actually like, he's a really good mentor. So it's all like full circle. But yeah, I would say there's definitely a lot of academic and extracurricular, both like official and unofficial.
So would you agree with me when I say that you should, as a possibility to find a mentor, that you should go open-minded through your daily life, both academic, also extracurricular, and just approach people if you are interested in them and also in their research? Because you said that you met all these people in different activities, but maybe you can add one or two more sentences on how you got a strong relationship with them. Was it just that you both felt on a personal level that you go along very well, that it just fits?
Yeah, I would say 100%. You should always like go in with an open mind. You never know who you're gonna get like a really good connection with. I think in these cases it was just like a really good fit. Either like for my SPS mentor, it turned out that we just like hanging out with each other and then had a lot of similar interests. And for my more academic and research mentors, it was like more, we had a lot of similar research interests. And I think that was more of what caused it to be such a good mentorship. And then that kind of followed with, we got along.
Okay, thank you very much. After hearing the student perspective, I would like to switch the perspective to the mentor side And here we have a question specifically for Larry and Bri. Since you both have mentoring experience, as a mentor, what do you expect from your mentee in this mentorship relation? Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go. Okay. So one is to clearly define what their goals are, so you know what they're long-term, what they're after, and related to that, clearly define what they want you to do. What do they want of their mentor, right? So I know what my role is, at least from their perspective. And then more specifically, try in each meeting, like, what do you want to do in this meeting, or have a mutual discussion about what do you want to do in this meeting, and then maybe plan for what do we want to do in the next meeting that we're going to have. I would expect my mentor to be honest and active, be engaged, active in communicating when we have our meetings. And also for them to be responsive to a suggestion or directions that the mentor provides to them.
I think you hit on pretty much everything I was going to say. And then going back to a point I made earlier about, the humility and honesty for mentors, I think this, as a mentor, I also expect it of mentees. I think going back to that perfectionism piece, right? I think a lot of times mentees are afraid to say like, oh, like I bombed that test, or, I didn't do as well on this interview as I thought I would. So being open to sharing not just the good things that are going on with you, but also areas where you could use a little bit of help and support with your mentor, because that's what they're there for, to help and support you, is also really important. And then also remembering you only get as much out of the mentoring relationship as what you put into it. So mentors can only show up and support so much, but really being willing to put in the work outside of those mentoring meetings. So if your mentor provides a suggestion or even gives you a name or someone in their network to say like, hey, maybe you should reach out to one of my colleagues because they're hosting this REU next summer. Actually do it, right? Actually do the things that your mentor suggests that you do, because you can't be mad when it's like, my mentor didn't help me do anything, but it's like, did you really follow some of the advice that they were giving? So being practicing humility and practicing honesty, but also really taking heed to the advice and the suggestions that your mentors give. And if that suggestion doesn't work, being honest with your mentor to say like, hey, I tried what you suggested and I don't think that was a good idea for me. What are some other things that we could potentially do together?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this was a very important point that you made, that you only get as much out of the program as you put into it. And I think the keyword here is really this communication, that you are open. Of course, I mean, we all want to present us in a best possible way. And also, I mean, if the mentor, he is probably much more advanced or experienced than we are. So we are maybe in this not equal relationship. We are maybe a little bit too afraid to show weakness or to show our failures. But as you both said, I think we should, as a mentee, really be open, because only then the mentor can help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, let me follow with actually personal experience in that a couple mentors ago, I had one student really say, normally you'd think you're helping students with their resume or courses and general things, but this one student I had, had some mental, it was really had some mental issues going on. And some of it had to do with their PhD professor and just other things. And I think just the fact that I was an independent, person who didn't know any of his friends or anything, and I was a safe person to talk to, I was almost acting like a therapist. He would just could talk to me and I could just respond to them and be positive with him and make suggestions. But I think just having that, really, it's kind of a unique bond as a mentor, because it's like you're in this, this very close relationship where, again, because there was this honest and trust between the two of us, he was able to, go into areas that I would not have expected that I would have been involved with as a mentor. But it was very helpful to him. And eventually, he got over all this and we ended up meeting in person a couple times, which made a huge difference as opposed to just by Zoom, because he was local. and that made a big difference in you know, the way he thought about graduate school and what his path was going to be.
That's a really nice story you are sharing here, because I think this is really the ideal case we all wish for, that we find a mentor who can not only support us in an academic way, but also lead to personal growth. And yeah, so to really get something out of this program also for yourself. I would continue with the question for Hannah, and this is there any experience you had in mentoring where you would say this was most valuable for you in your academic journey? Were there any experience or several experiences you would like to share?
You mean like when like a mentor is like I received? Like from a
Yeah,
mentor?
some
Okay, yeah.
experience with mentorship, regarding mentorship, that
Okay.
lead to something good in your academic journey.
Okay, yeah. Actually, where I am like right now is one big example. So my research mentor, as I mentioned, one thing that we really get along about is he's very interested and knowledgeable in the field of accelerator physics, and I'm very interested in accelerator physics. And I've like communicated with him, and he kind of encouraged me to come here, which is like the US like particle accelerator school. And now I'm taking a course on accelerator physics, and I'm learning a lot. And I'm making a lot of connections, and he's really vouched for me to be like, oh, you've probably heard of this guy who's teaching this course. You should talk to him. He's connected to our lab, and you can get like a summer internship, which I've done. So this has been a really amazing experience because it's been like my first real exposure to the field, and I'm getting like an actual education of stuff in the field at like basically a graduate level. And I've been making a lot of connections. So this has been like a really amazing experience that would only be possible through the mentorship from him. And then, yeah, he's also the one who's getting me to go to my first conference in the spring, which I'm very looking forward to, and will also probably be a very amazing experience for me in my like academic career.
That's very nice to hear. So I'm very glad that you found a mentor who has a very good connection to you, and that you both found a great fit. However, this is not always the case. So my next question is, maybe a person is already in a mentorship relation, but at some point he has the feeling that it's not the best decision, or mentor and mentee do not fit best together. So from the mentee perspective, to all of you guys, what would you say is the right thing to do?
So I actually also just had this experience. The very first person I did research with, we weren't really a great fit. I don't think I really wanted to do that kind of research, was also kind of like the bottom line. But yeah, we're also just weren't really getting like the whole mentor-mentee kind of relationship. And the way that I handled it was I was just honest, or I kind of said that like well, I left like that research lab, and I was trying to communicate with like, well, I first tried to like get it to work for a while, like 6 months or something. And then I think it was kind of clear for both of us that like it wasn't really working. So there weren't really hard feelings. I think if it's not really working for the mentee, the mentor kind of picks up on that, at least from my experience. So as long as you don't do anything really disrespectful when you're be honest and respectful, I think you can leave amicably, and it's no hard feelings, because that's just kind of part of how research goes. It's not expected for you to make a good connection with every single person, especially if that turns out, I mean, as an undergraduate, at least, you're kind of still sampling all the different like kind of things you can do research in. So you don't have to commit to the first one you do. I think it's very common to kind of try the first one and then have it not work out perfectly. And that's just like everybody's understands that.
And now if we switch the perspective to the mentor side, so Larry, Bri, what would you say to a person that does want to maybe end the relationship to the mentor, or should the person end the relationship? Should the person continue? What is your opinion from the other perspective?
I echo what Hannah said. Definitely don't just ghost your mentor. That's not it's not a good way to maintain, good amicable relationships, especially even though physics is a big field, it's also kind of a small field. So you definitely don't want to burn any bridges. Um, but also as much as we talked about the importance of finding good mentors and the traits of good mentors, honestly, there are such things as bad mentors. Like there's one thing to have a mentor that's not a good fit for your research interests or for your personality, and there are some generally bad mentors. And so if there's a case where you feel that if you're part of like a research group or in your lab and you feel the mentor is being purposefully exclusionary towards you, or you feel that you're being treated differently than maybe other folks who has this person as a mentor, reach out to resources. APS is a resource. Once again, I'm willing to put myself out there as a point of contact, to get you connected to the right folks who can help navigate that. But also, I think this question is also why it's really important to have more than one mentor, because you don't want to be in a situation where you have one mentor, that relationship isn't working out, and now you don't have a mentor at all. Something I always say is that one mentor will not fulfill all of your mentoring needs. Like Larry mentioned, you may have a mentor where that's just your person that you vent to. Like that's your person you're comfortable talking about personal stuff with, talking about things that are happening outside of the classroom, outside of the lab with. And then you may have a research mentor where you are only talking about whatever the research topic is. And then you may have a career mentor. You may have a mentor who is doing the thing that you want to do when you graduate, and this person is helping you navigate applying for internships or updating your resume and CV, and that's totally okay. But I think it's really important to build and cultivate a network of mentors so that you're not depending on one person to be that mentor for you, so that if it doesn't work out, then you're just kind of stuck.
Also, I think you can profit much more from a diverse background because you have a lot more experience with different mentors, and everyone has their own specific specialization, their own field of experience and stuff. So I think that's a very good point. Larry, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just give a little different. I agree with it, with everything that Bri and Hannah said. That, but I'm in a program. I've been in the mentoring program I've been doing has been through UC San Diego through their School of Physical Sciences, and it's very specifically they match you up. You're matched with a mentee, so you don't really have an option of having. You don't even select your own mentor. They select for you based on things that you put in a questionnaire and what the mentors areas are. But in that case, if it's not working out, I think your only options are try to either do local or global. Locally is trying to work with have the mentor and the mentee just try to discuss what the issues are. And if anything can be resolved, between the two of you, just to make it clear what the issues are. And if those are unresolvable, then I think you have to go back to the people who are managing the mentoring program and say, it's not working out. Do you want to just end this, or can you give me another mentor? Because in this case, like I said, you don't really have a selection of mentors. It's a very defined program, which may be true of some programs, may be true of, not, I don't know. But at least in the case that I'm in, you're matched up and that's it. So, yeah, so either work locally or globally.
Okay, thank you also for this experience or this perspective. Then I would go on and say, okay, we imagine that you're a student and you have a mentoring experience, you have a lot of mentors, but at some point in your career, you will also be more specialized and maybe you will become the mentor. And for example, Larry and Bri, you both have mentoring experience. Was there any transition from you being mentored by mentors to being a mentor yourself? Or can you somehow convert skills you learned from the mentorship program during your studies to being a better mentor yourself? Bri, you are already nodding.
That's a great, because I was trying to think like at what point did I transition from, because I'm still youngish in my career. And I've worked with students my whole career. And I honestly sometimes find myself learning as much from my mentees as I learn from my mentors. Um, and so I'll give you an example. When I was in grad school, I was a master's student, but I hung out a lot with the PhD students who were obviously folks who were way more experienced than me, but not that far off in age than me, so very near peer. And so we would call each other, I would call them my friend tour because they were my friend, but also my mentor. And we still maintain kind of that friend tour relationship. And I think for me, what I've learned from mentors who have just been good role models for me and that have shaped how I show up as a mentor is it goes back to that authenticity piece. Like all my mentors have been unapologetically themselves. They show up as themselves. And speaking specifically for me as a Black woman, most of my mentors have been Black women. And so really seeing that role modeled and being able to role model that for my mentees, regardless of their background, has been something that I've taken away. It's just really staying true to myself and navigating what it means to be an authentic person in a professional workplace where sometimes that's not always welcome or valued. Um, so I would say that those are my main takeaways from that transition. And I'm still working through the transition because sometimes I'm like, dang, people look up to me like I'm a role model to someone, which is a lot of responsibility to carry. But I enjoy doing it. And I enjoy creating space for other mentors to kind of cultivate those same types of relationships with mentees to hopefully have a group of mentees who one day become really good mentors.
I like the idea that this all is a very good learning process, and I'm glad to hear that you took a lot from it. And Larry, you want to continue?
Yeah. So I want to just say that students these days are really quite lucky because there are all these different mentoring, opportunities and organizations that didn't exist when I was a student. And I want to say you can actually go cold turkey and just become a mentor without really having been menteed, which was my experience. The closest I had to a mentee as an undergrad was the professor I did summer research with. But that was really just talking about the research and mentoring you for the research. It really wasn't mentoring for a career or for anything else. And in graduate school, I had a great professor who, did do some mentoring and helping me in terms of careers, but it was really more of the standard graduate student professor relationship. So I really think I'm kind of sad in a way that I didn't really have a lot of mentors, especially at my company or in my student days, and yet I feel like I've become a good mentor. So I don't think you need to necessarily transition from mentee to mentor. You can just do it. But I'm historically been good with people, and I think those skills carry over when you do become a mentor. I mean, if you generate conflict in your normal life, then you probably won't become a really good mentor. But if you tend to like to listen to people and work well with others, I think that's going to naturally lead you to become a good mentor. I will say also that mentoring in this situation has a direct relationship to becoming a good mentor or manager in at least in industry. There are mentor programs, by the way, in industry as well. I have been part of that, where you mentor a young and up and coming engineer or scientist, and you meet in a very similar way to what I do with my physics student, which is you meet once a month and you talk about whatever the mentee wants to talk about. So there are mentoring programs in industry as well. They're quite common, and I've really enjoyed being a mentor to a colleague at work as much as I do enjoy being a mentor for a student.
Okay, maybe a follow-up question on that for Hannah. So you are right now in the position as a mentee. do you plan to also become a mentor in the future? And what are which things you learned in the menteeship that you want to also transition to a mentor in case you want to become one?
Yeah, so I think I definitely want to become a mentor eventually. Either, or I think both like an informal one and if like formal through one of the like actual like programs that were mentioned earlier. But I think all the points that Bri and Larry brought up earlier, where it's like, I think the mentors who were most helpful for me were ones that were like actually genuinely cared about like me as a mentee. So I would want to really make sure to like look out for my mentee and also just being open and honest about everything, like my imperfections and stuff, because I feel like mentor relationships that I've had that didn't work out so far were mostly because like I would be kind of afraid of like my mentor because they'd be very intimidating, and they are in a like position of power with you and as like the mentee, but it's really important to not abuse that and kind of show that like you're also human and having mistakes and failures, and that will make it so the mentee isn't afraid to like be like, oh yeah, I failed my exam. And I think that would be much more constructive. So yeah, I hope to bring that kind of vibe to if I ever become a mentor.
I think this is a really great point because also from my experience, I see a lot of people that are afraid to talk to authorities and stuff like that. And just being approachable can be very valuable as a mentor. I would like to follow up on what Bri said in the previous question. You elaborated on your background and your ethnicity. And are there any possibilities how to navigate cultural or personality differences between mentors and mentees? So what are possible ways or strategies, or is it an advantage or disadvantage from your experience?
I think it's an advantage. I think it's as important as it is to have a diverse network of mentors, diverse in terms of background and like how they're able to show up for you. I think it's also important to have it's important to be able to see yourself in your mentors, and it's also important to have diverse perspectives, whether it's someone who's a different race than you, someone that's a different gender than you, because we live in a diverse society. And for me, I've had mentors from all different walks of life who have showed up for me in so many different ways, and I'm so appreciative of that. And I would say you navigate that the same way you would any other type of relationship. Having a professor who looks different for you or has a different background than you, or having, friends or classmates. And I think it's important practice and exercise and being able to understand someone's perspective and expand the lens of how you view your world by being able to gather perspectives from someone who has a different background than you.
I totally agree. And also, we already said that you don't have to have one mentor which fulfills all criteria. You can have several mentors, but I think at the same time, it's also good to have one role model in front of you that, just gives you some encouragement and stuff. Okay, any other questions or experiences on that you want to share? So we agree that it's an advantage. Do we agree on that? Okay, very nice. Then we can actually switch over to the live questions we have. And the first live question is, can you tell about foreign students on finding good mentors and career opportunities inside of the United States? So coming from outside the United States, how can we have this first connection to a mentor in the United States, because systems are different in different countries. And I think for foreign students, it's in particular difficult to get the first footstep into the open doors. Larry, please.
Well, I believe that if you are a foreign student, you can get 1 year free APS membership if you're an undergraduate. And therefore, if you're an APS member, then you can join at least the impact program and take part in that. So you can be part of a mentoring program. Like I said, if you're a foreign student and you're not part of the APS, you can get free membership and then join that. So that's an opportunity for a foreign student to get mentoring, at least for industrial careers. I don't know about the other, I'm not as familiar with the other mentoring programs at APS.
Yeah, I was actually going to speak to the NMC as well. You're absolutely right about impact. And with the NMC, we actually have a lot of mentors who are not US citizens. So they have the similar experience of navigating being in another country and figuring out how do I find opportunities in the United States. And so the NMC is also open to international students who are looking to connect with mentors who are able to speak to that as well. Even when you complete your profile for the NMC, that's a question that we ask, or that's a topic that you can express interest in discussing with your mentor. And our mentors, conversely, if they're comfortable and speaking on that topic, will check that off on their profile as well.
I think this is really valuable information. And as Larry said previously, we have a lot of programs. We have a lot of opportunities. We just need to advocate them because a lot of people don't know about them. So I think we can be happy if some of you guys, of the attendees, got to know some of these programs. And please write us if you want to know anything else about these programs. If you have further questions, you can also submit them now. You can write us an email. We are really happy to answer this all.
If I can add something from the perspective of an international student in the US, I think it's definitely a fact that not all opportunities are open to you, but there are some ways around it. It's usually easier to find mentorship at your own university or find programs for study abroad there because they're probably open to you, no matter what your citizenship status is. It's also a good idea to look for opportunities, perhaps outside of your home country, but also outside of the US. I spent one summer in Germany, and I really love that. It was fully funded and open to anyone. So that's definitely a thing to look for. Just know where you're most likely to find an experience that you'd like and is open to you. But also, I think, as our panelist says, it's important to find the mentors that can point in those directions. And I would say grad students are usually a pretty international bunch, and they had those experiences and they know how to navigate them because they have a bit more experience than you. So I think that's the first place I would look to.
Thank you very much for this first-hand information. So I think this concludes this question very nicely. And I would go further to the next question. And this is, can you share your review on young researchers' role in mentorship and mentor committee meeting? So if I understood the question correctly, then we are asked for the opinion on the role of young researchers, that they inherently have a mentorship position inside, or do they embody a mentorship position? I think this correlates with another question further down. Is a research advisor inherently agreeing to be a mentor for you, or do you need to have a conversation about requesting mentorship for additional professional development outside of research? So what would you say about, is your supervisor, for example, young researchers for student, is this inherently a mentor? Or would you have an additional talk with them to also support other areas of your life? Yes.
Well, I know this came up in one of the things I think I was doing for the effective practices in physics program, but I can't recall exactly. And this topic came up, and I believe the consensus was that it's important to have a mentor outside of your professorship, because that way you can honestly discuss what's going on with your research professor or, PhD professor. And I think I mean, in my case, when I was a student, you know, that opportunity didn't exist. Your professor was it. But I think nowadays with all the mentorship opportunities, and I think a lot of departments have mentor opportunities for their professors. It's good to have, like I said, a separate mentor, separate from your research professor, just because you can then, right, then you can then talk about things you couldn't talk about with your professor. So if that opportunity is there, I think that's, you know, the optimal situation.
I definitely agree with you on that. But would you recommend to, if let's imagine you have a research position, for example, you're writing your master thesis or stuff like that, your PhD thesis, would you recommend to have an additional talk with his supervisor if you could extend this relationship of yours a little bit further to also mentoring, that he can share some ideas of his life, some perspectives? Or would you generally say this depends on the situation or this relationship you already feel? So if you already feel this connection, then maybe you can extend this a little bit further to a mentorship role. Yeah. Hannah,
No, go
please.
for it, Hannah. Please go for it, Hannah.
I mean, I think what I'm going to say is probably very different because it's just like from the mentee perspective. But yeah, I don't think I've ever formally like sat down with one of my research professors and been like, "Can you be my mentor?" I think it's all kind of happened more organically, where I think it is kind of like an unspoken rule that if you were like an undergraduate, especially, and you're doing research for like in a research group, that PI will be kind of like a mentor to you, at least for within the field. And then if you want to extend it more into like a more personal mentorship with like outside of just that field, for like academics and stuff, I think I've just kind of been like, hey, do you have a minute to like talk about how you got to like where you are now? I don't think I've ever like sat down though and been like, can you formally be my mentor? If that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much. Larry, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on, you know, reading your professor that you're working with, or a person you're working with, and seeing if they're willing to go that extra length. I mean, ideally, you know, you'd want the professor you're working with, either as an undergrad or a graduate student, to mentor you as much as possible, right? You want to get as much out of them as you can, but they also have limited time and, you know, tremendous amount of things on their plate. So I would say that I think I would expect that, you know, if you're in a PhD program with a professor, I think it is a natural to assume that that professor would provide, you know, a decent amount of mentoring to you, because you're really, you know, they're responsible for you to some extent. So I think the relationship of an undergraduate researcher and a professor's lab is a little different expectation than the expectation of a graduate student in a professor's lab.
Thank you very much. Bri, you also wanted to say something when
No, I think the experts handled that one. In regards to research, I have not done research in physics.
Yeah, but I think this is a really good point, that, like Larry said beforehand, you can feel the connection if there is any possibility to build up on that. But also, like Hannah said, I think it's rarely that you really formally, admit now that from this day on you are mentor and mentee. So personally, I would maybe try some maybe a little private question and just ask my mentor and then see how he reacts or she reacts. And from this on, I maybe get a grasp on if there's potential for a mentoring relationship, or maybe not. Maybe I can search another mentor outside. Although this is not exclusively, I can also additionally search another mentor outside. And but I think that's a really good point. Larry, yeah?
Yeah, and I think we should also realize that, you know, if you're an undergraduate, a better mentor might be a more senior undergraduate or a grad student or a postdoc, because they're closer to where you are than where the professor, you know, where you are now than the professor is. So I think, you know, you have a whole range of potential mentors with the entire research lab that you're working in.
Yeah, I actually was going to chime in and say that exact thing. And also emphasizing the point Hannah made, that I think a lot of times when we think of mentorships, we think of something very formal, like me and this person have a mentoring contract, which some mentoring relationships are like that. Some formalized mentoring programs are like that. And you may very well find out that you have a lot of mentors in your life that you may not even refer to as your mentor, but they are actively providing guidance on your journey. Um, and so mentors can show up in so many different ways. They don't always have to, it doesn't always have to be a formalized mentoring relationship with a designated start date, end date, designated meetings and things like that for that person to be considered a mentor. So similar to what Larry said, we can find mentors in a variety of places, in a variety of people, and that could include upper class students or graduate students or TAs who may not necessarily be the professor or the department head, but still folks who have a little bit more experience and can provide guidance.
I would agree on that fully. I think this discussion here correlates with a nice question we have from the audience, and this is a very specific question. How early should you be seeking out for mentors? I'm a first-year undergraduate and already feel somewhat overwhelmed with university life and haven't been able to make many connections. I think this correlates very nice with what Larry said, that you can have different mentors in different specializations and also on different levels on expertise. So maybe another undergraduate student, a graduate student, and also what Bri said is very helpful. I think that mentors can show up in so many different roles and so many different occasions. And like Hannah said, also informally, it doesn't always have to be formally. They can also help you in a very informal way. And I would recommend to you that you just go open-minded throughout everyday life and be honest to other people. And does anyone have to add something to this question? Any other
Yeah, you were
recommendations?
spot on. I was gonna say it's never too early. I think about an NMC mentee that I had a chance to work with. He actually got his mentor when he was in high school, and they connected through the area of physics research that he was really interested in, and that mentorship kind of bloomed. And then once he transitioned into being an undergrad student, he was able to more formalize that mentorship through the NMC. So like we've, I think, emphasized, mentors are everywhere. You can have a mentor at any stage in your career, and I don't think it's ever too early to find a mentor or too late to find one. So don't feel like you're behind because you're overwhelmed now as I think they said a first year undergrad student. Sounds to me like you're at the perfect place and the perfect time in your career to seek out mentorship.
And I also wanted to add that I know, like, I was also feeling very overwhelmed last year, being a first year in college and stuff. And one of my most influential mentors and helpful mentors then was actually just somebody who was an upperclassman, because which was like a very informal thing. Like, you could just meet in like the student lounge or whatever doing homework. And that was very helpful because she had really good advice on like making it less overwhelming and like what kind of classes you can take, and like here's some resources, because she had already gone through being an underclassman at my university. So I would 100% advocate for just reaching out to upperclassmen. They love giving advice to underclassmen.
Or if there's a women in physics organization at your institution or a SPS organization at your institution, those could also be good starting points to finding those peer mentors. Some institutions too have like a women in science and engineering program. I used to be an assistant director for one that was actually a near peer mentoring program. So upper class students mentored first and second year STEM students.
I would definitely agree with all what you said, and I think we have a broad variety of different important aspects covered here. And to wrap it a little bit up, I think the most important points are just to connect with people and don't be afraid from authorities. A lot of people are nice and actually want to help you. This is also from my experience. Just approach people, just ask. If they don't have time, they will tell you, but it's completely fine. So, and also you don't have to pick one specific person, just have it a little bit more relaxed and search in every area that you want to role model or another person that you admire or you strive for similar goals, and just connect with these people, talk to them. Mentoring can have many different roles, many different aspects, and we often have this stereotypical thought in mind how mentorship should be, that it should be formal, but we have seen throughout this webinar that this is definitely not the case. And I think these are the main points. And like we said, diversity and having a lot of people is always an advantage. And in the best case, both people can learn from this mentoring relationship, the mentee, also the mentor. And I would like to encourage the audience, if you have any questions left, please submit them now. We have one question left that says, how do you tell a mentor that you want to end your mentorship? I think we already partly covered this question. So if there are difficulties, I think the first step is not to end the mentorship relation, but rather try to resolve it and just communicate openly. And if it doesn't work out, then being honest, because I think in the end, if it is really not a fit of mentee and mentor, you both will not profit from it. And also I think that the mentor will get a grasp on this feeling, because like we said, the mentee should try to follow the advice of the mentor. And if the mentor sees that the mentee is discouraged and doesn't follow the suggestions, then of course it's frustrating for both of them. Do you have anything to add this, or any comment on this? Because otherwise, I think we are done with the live questions. And like I said, mentoring can have many different roles. I hope that for the audience, this was helpful. Again, if you have any questions, please submit them now or later per email. We are always happy to answer your questions. Also, if you have a very specific question, maybe you are in a specific situation in your studies, it's good to submit this a little bit more extended via email. Then we can really, answer this properly, and feel free to just approach us. We are all happy to help you. And with these last words said, I would like to hand over back to Ariana. And I would like to thank all the panelists. Please also, on the audience, give the panelists a huge applause that they took their time and answered our questions. So thank you very much from my side and also from the audience.
Yes, thank you so much, Maurice, for moderating the Q&A and the questions. Sadly, this is all the time we have for the webinar. We hope we have covered most of your questions, and we really apologize if we not get to answer it. We encourage you to follow up by sending an email to webinars@aps.org, and we'll forward your questions to our speakers for comment. Well, I would like to also thank again all of our speakers, Bri Hart, Hannah McCright, and Dr. Larry Woolf for their time to participate in this webinar. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the efforts of our Pulse team in making this webinar successful. These team members are undergrad and graduate students, and they have put in a lot of work to make this webinar a success. A recording of the video will be made available on the webinar homepage, to which you will be directed at the end of the presentation. Please allow for up to 5 days for upload. Lastly, in order to help APS continue to develop quality webinar presentations, please help us by taking a moment to complete the short survey as you exit the webinar today. This wraps up today's events, and I hope you'll join us again next time for our last Pulse seminar. American Physical Society, copyright 2023, all rights reserved.